Hey, and welcome back to the Learning Java 2D Game Programming series. It's been a few days since we did any programming because we have been doing some graphics. We have been rendering out some sprites. Let me see if I can show you what those look like. And let's not use that one. Let's use Paint because that one smooths them. So this is what we ended up with from our Blender series, and I'm gonna have a link where you can download these files so that you can go along if you don't want to make your own. So the first thing that I want you to do that I have already done is find your project in what do you call it? The Explorer? Yes, you can see what I mean. Find your project. So in here, make a folder called Resources. Inside of Resources, make a folder called Sprites. And then again, a folder called Units. And then this is what you will have inside of the zip file that you will download. So just two guys with a walk, a stand, and a coughing animation. So we have Dave and we have Matt, just names out of the blue, just so we have something to work with. All right, so into the code. So for today, it's gonna be a couple of videos before we can actually use these guys inside of our game. For today's video, we are just gonna load up all of these different sprites into sprite sets that we will later be able to use. So there's just going to be a lot of file system loading, doing things basically. Just start by right-clicking your new resources folder inside of the IDE and say mark directory as resources root. So it's a good thing to do this directly because otherwise you'll forget, and then you'll get a null pointer exception when you try to load in your sprites and you won't know why, and you'll spend lots of time trying to debug why you're not finding your files. Trust me. So once we've done that, hopefully we won't end up with this problem. So the first thing we want to do is create a new package, and we'll just call it GFX, which stands for graphics. And the first thing we'll create in here is a Java class called image utils, which for now will hold the code for loading in an image from disk. So what this will have is a public static method which returns an image, which is called load image, and it takes in a file path. So Alt Enter to import that image. And now this needs to be inside of a try and catch block because we're going to do some IO stuff. And so I'm just going to say could not load image from path and then say plus file path in case something happens. So it's angry because we're not doing anything inside of the try block yet. So what we want to do is return image IO, which is something that's inside of Java, and then say read, and then say image utils class get resource and say file path. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why you do it this way. I've seen it being done this way. I never fully understand it, why you get the class and then get resource from the class. I'm not sure. If you know, then please write in the comments. I would love to know that. Otherwise, we'll just move on and know that this works. This will read from this resources folder and then whatever file path we specify. All right. It's looking a little unhappy, right? Because if we don't find anything, then let's just return null. Okay. So we are done with this class. let's just shut that down, or sorry, close it. And then we'll start by making another class, which we will call a SpriteSet. So you can think of a SpriteSet as either Dave or Matt. Both of them will be SpriteSets. So a SpriteSet will contain a map that has a string and an image, key string value image, which means, sorry, let me just import the map. And we'll call this animation sheets. So this would be like, the string would be the name of the animation and then the image that it belongs to. So if we actually have a look inside here, it could be, one animation sheet could be walk, and then this walk image would be what would be stored inside as value. So that's what it's going to be used as. Now let's make some constructors. Let's make it a hash map. All right, and then let's make some methods that we can use, like add sheet, and it'll have a name and an image. And for that, we'll just do animation sheets put name animation sheets. Okay. And then we'll also have a get method. So you give it a name and it returns an image. So return animation sheets get name. Right? So that will be good for now. We might later want to actually check that it actually contains our name, but keep it simple. So we'll just do this for now and we'll come back to it later. So this is also done. Now we are coming to the class that's gonna take a little more time. So I'm gonna call this, sorry, the Sprite Library, Sprite Library. So we're gonna, this class is going to look through our resources folder and actually load the images from disk, and also create these sprite sets and keep them. You're gonna see what I mean in just a minute. So the first thing we want to do is we actually want to keep a map in here as well, also with a string, but then with a sprite set. And let's call this units. So if the sprite set was like a Dave and he kept his animations and their names, this keeps Dave as the key and Dave's sprite set as value. So that's how that will work. And let's just make a public Sprite Library constructor where we say that units is a new hash map, right? And import. And now let's say load sprites from disk. Okay, so let's make a private method that's called load sprites from disk. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find all of the folder names that are in wherever we are specifying. And actually right now we're only going to write the code to look inside of units, and we will change this later, but keep it simple, right? So start by only finding units, which means we're probably going to need, we're going to call this many times. Let's just say private, we need a constant field. Do we want it static? I don't know. Let's say private static string. Maybe we want to make it final. Private final static string. Yep. So let's call it path to units, just for ease. And this will be under sprites and then under units. This is the path to units. We just did that because I thought of it, so we're not using it yet. Get folder names. So let's make a method that will find all the folder names within wherever we are right now, and or wherever we specify. So let's just say give folder names, and maybe we can take in a string base path, which means we actually need to use this now, path to units. So looking at the base path, we say URL resource, and just import that. So Sprite Library, and just like before, say class and get resource, and then say base path. And now we get a file, new file, resource, get file. So a file doesn't necessarily need to be like an actual file. It seems to be just something in your file system. So it could also be a folder. A folder also counts as a file in this context. So what we want to do now is we want to return file.list, which will make a list of everything inside of it, I guess. And we can actually pass in a method, which it will use to determine if it's a filter. So this method inside of the list function that is inside of file, it can take in a filter function. So anything that matches this will be returned inside of this array of strings. So just say new file current name. So the current is the base path of the file where we're at, and the name is, well, the name of something inside of this file. And then say is directory. So we loop through everything that's inside of this folder. And for all of the different items inside of the folder, we check, is this a directory? And if it returns true, then we include it in this array of strings. So now we actually have all of the folder names inside of this base path. Awesome. Now we need a loop. So let's make a for loop. So for every folder name inside of folder names, for every folder. Now we are inside of Dave or Matt. It's getting late, you can tell, because I'm having a hard time speaking, right? I hope you can bear with me. It's not going to be that much longer. So for every folder name inside of folder names, let's just make a new SpriteSet. All right, and let's find the name of all the sheets in this folder. So now we're doing a similar thing that we just did, but with a bit different. So let's just, this takes first the base path. Let's put these together. Sorry, it was path to units, and then add this, and then add the folder name. So that's its base path in this case. And what this will do, oh, let's just call this base path. This will do something very similar. Actually, let's just copy this for now and say, so we want to get the resource at this base path, which will now be inside Dave or inside Matt. So we'll find all of the files inside of Dave or Matt, but now we don't want the ones that are a directory. We want the ones that is file. Okay, so basically we want, there will only be PNGs in there for now. So this will be good. If there were any other folders in there, that name would not be returned in this file list function. Awesome. So we have the path, or rather we have the names of all of our PNG files inside of the folder. So what we can do now is we say for sheet name inside of sheets in folder. Let's go SpriteSet, add sheet, and we have the sheet name but we want to do a substring because we don't want the file ending. So let's say sheet name length -4. That way we don't get the .png, sorry. And now we need the actual image, and we made a method that loads them for us, right? So all we need to do is, right, we don't have, actually we could just do this, extract this, because we're using it again. So let's just make a variable of it. Call it string path to folder, and call it this. So path to folder. Good, because now we need to start with path to folder, but we need to add first a slash and then the name, the sheet name. Okay, so this should be good. We've added each sheet to our sprite set. So the only thing that we need to do now is to add it to our units map. So let's say units.put, and we have the folder name, and we have the sprite set. Okay, so I'm sorry, it's late and I'm a little tired, but I think we did it. So this will be it for this video. We have written all the code that will look inside of units for now and find all the units, which means that we can just add more folders, and it will be automatically loaded inside of the game. So later we could actually make maybe like fetch random SpriteSet for our units, and you could have a random look every time if we wanted that. Just to try this out and make sure that everything is working as it should, let's just go into the game, very quickly make one of these objects. Let's give it a private Sprite Library. Sprite Library. And let's initialize it. Let's just say Sprite Library is equal to new Sprite Library, right? And then if we go into the Sprite Library, after we've loaded this, maybe over here actually, line 17, after we've loaded sprites from disk, let's just add a breakpoint and press this debug button and see what we find. So something is not working. Sharing is only supported for bootloader classes because Bootstrap class path has been appended. All right, I am back again. I was just checking why it wasn't working, and from what I could tell, there was a bug when we marked the resources folder as our resources root. So what I did was I went mark directory as and then unmark as resources root, and then I did it again. I went back and said mark directory as resources root. And then I just pressed this build button just to be certain. And after that, it looks like our resource actually has something now. So if we just go back to where we were here, now we can see that our units map has loaded SpriteSet Dave and SpriteSet mapped. And we can look inside Dave maybe. Here he has animation sheets, and we can even see this walk. Let's see if we can view as, I know I've seen somehow, oh right, here is the value buffered image. And can we, if we press inspect, there's this little show image. So we can see that it actually loaded the right images, which is super good. So now we actually have our sprites that we can use inside of our game. And this will be enough for this video. I will be back with a new video soon, and then we will create some sort of animation player, and we'll also write some code for figuring out the direction so that we can actually use these sprites and walk around. I look forward to that, so I hope you do too. All right, thank you for watching. Hej då!